Well, what is up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 63 of the Faith and Pop Culture Podcast. It is me, your host, Daniel, and I am joined by the one, the only Naya Carlson. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm
Are
enjoying
you?
this rainy weather.
I know it is dreary, but perfect weather to dive
Yeah.
into conversations about faith and pop culture. Always a lot
Yes.
going on. This is a especially interesting week, given that this is the week of Halloween. So we're definitely going to wade into that because that is always a conversation that I think just within the church, within the Christian community, there is some division for, some uncertainty, sometimes some passionately articulated opinions about what to do, celebrate, don't celebrate, and does it make you a good or bad Christian? So we will get into all of that conversation. But before we do, there was an interesting thing that came up this week. Again, here where we live, it's dreary weather, perfect weather for watching some movies, watching some TV. And speaking of movies and TV, so there's an article or a survey that came out that it's like an annual, it's called Teens and Screens, that just looks at like the viewing habits, particularly of Gen Z, kind of the younger generation, and pulls a lot of them and just tries to, pulls together some of the data for just the tendencies, the habits, which I always find every year. I always read through it because I think there's a lot of interesting just nuggets that I think some of them are surprising, some of them maybe aren't. So now I know you, one, are a Gen Z, so you are the target
I
audience
am.
of this is representing. So you have a unique perspective on that. But you've also been kind of looking through this survey. So why don't you kind of unpack a little bit just some of these findings and tendencies that came out through this survey?
Yeah. Well, I think it's from in my limited research, the Center for Storytellers or for Scholars and Storytellers, pardon me, at UCLA comes out with this survey every year. And so this year it was very interesting. They subverted a lot, subverted a lot of the general assumptions that we only consume social media content, that it's all like sexually explicit, that we don't go out to do things, but only sit home and watch TV. And we have a super short attention span, like shorter than a goldfish, which is insane.
Are you saying that that's
But
not true?
for some people it is. I will admit. I like to think that I'm not one of those people, and I can hold a conversation, but no hate. Anyways, so this year the Teens and Screen survey polled 1,500 Gen Z and found that 53% of young Americans discuss movies and TV shows with friends more than they discuss content they watch on social media. Gen Z, we want to go to the movies, share in the common experience with our friends, and talk about what we watched. That's why I think Letterboxd is still so popular, even outside of like film majors, all of that crew. We're tired of over-romanticized and unrealistic or unattainable relationships, and we want real and relatable content focusing on friendship over sex. And then I'll throw some numbers out at you. 59.7% said they want more content where the central relationships are friendships. 54.1% said they want to see portrayals of characters who aren't interested in romantic relationships. 54.9% want different gender friendships. And 49% said they want more same gender friendships. And they also showed that they wanted to see healthy conflict resolution, which is such a unique thing. Like, I don't think I would think to ask that in a survey. But what do you think this shows about Gen Z and their trajectory? Like, what is this? How does this relate to how you see them living and
Yeah, I think
engaging?
there's a lot, and obviously I want to get your, how much this resonates with you as someone that is a Gen Z. I'm a millennial, so this isn't necessarily although there is, I think, a lot of overlap. I think the survey would probably get somewhat similar answers from my generation as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I think in some ways, it's continuing trends that have been coming out for the last couple of years. Like, I think it's veering kind of more towards this. And I think even the data too, something like 54% or something. I think there's lots of different answers that were asked. So it's not just like 50-50. Like, I think it is an
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming amount that kind of want these. But yeah, I think some of the things that stand out to me is like the main one is just the this yearning for like how we portray relationships. I think there's, I think older generations in particular can probably look at like the media and the types of shows and with streaming and what you can get away with now that you didn't used to be able to show on network television, and assume that it's just, well, these Gen Zers, all they want is these sex and relationships and all this stuff, and on their euphoria, every show needs to be
Mhm.
like that, and they need like all that kind of conversation. um and more like, this data seems to suggest like, no, like that's what they're given. That's what's out there. That's what the kind of show. There is a lot more of that content. There's also just a lot more content, so you're going to get more of that stuff too.
Mhm.
But it seems to suggest like, no, like there's Gen Z isn't necessarily driven towards that. Like there's sort of this lost element of just like platonic, wholesome friendship, whether that's cross genders or same gender, like that isn't sexual, isn't romantic in any way, that maybe has been missing. But what do you think that is? Like as a Gen Zer, like what is it about sort of friendships and some of that that you think makes people of your generation like want to see that on screen?
Yeah, I think it feels more permanent in a way. Like friends friends it's just such a unique relationship, and it's a God-given relationship. And so um yeah, I think it feels more permanent. I think it's related to having to go through COVID. Like I entered college during quarantine, and it was really, really tough, and that all that I wanted was a community of people that, like, whether it was all women or men, I just wanted friends, because there was nothing happening on campus. And I think a lot of people felt that way and are still trying to get out of that isolation mindset. And yeah, I think a lot of times the way that the media also portrays romantic relationships is unsustainable, is unattainable, is unrealistic, and we're tired of that. We're disillusioned, it's time to show, like, I think friendships too are more common, and that makes them more relatable. Of course, most people, I would say, would have romantic relationships, but going through your life, you have more friends than you have romantic partners, just in general. Or I hope so. Anyways,
Yeah,
um,
and I wonder too, like I know, because like you can get a buzzy headline of Gen Z doesn't want to see sex on screen or whatever, and I hope that's true. I think that is true in certain situations. I do think there is probably an aspect of like, because there's just so much of it, like in an era where on your phone at any time you can access like endless amounts of like pornographic content, the like sort of the need to satisfy that lust through movies and stuff isn't as the same as maybe it was when there wasn't
mm-mm,
internet, and that internet wasn't on your device that you carried in your pocket at all time. That I do think there's probably a sense of just, hey, we're just so inundated with sex and all this, told that we need to be having sex and what that sex needs to be like and all that kind of stuff, that I just I think there is sort of a counter reaction to that of like, yeah, like, that's obviously a part of our existence that, God created, but like there's so much more to relationships than just having sex with someone. And I feel like you're sort of seeing some of that of, that movement towards like, what does like friendship look like? Why does it always have to be about sex? And I think too, like you were
yeah.
saying, I think one of the assumptions that people have towards sort of Gen Z, I think even millennials, is, that because of screens and digital worlds and all that kind of stuff, that just they're like, unsocial, like they're antisocial. They don't want to be around people. And I've always kind of pushed back, and I think the data pushes back on that too.
Hmm.
Like, no, they're not antisocial. Like, they're just sort of unsocialized. Like, it's almost harder. The way the world has gone, like, it's almost harder to find that community now than maybe it was, as some of the meeting places and things that we used to do as communities sort of start to fade away, and we are
Yeah.
more on our screens. And that I think you're sort of seeing, because even like the wanting to go to the movies and stuff, like that kind of goes against a lot of the narratives that you hear out there, that young people don't want to like actually, they just want to like text each other. They don't want to like be in person with each other. And at least in my experience, I don't know if that's in your
Yeah.
experience too, like that isn't necessarily the case. Like I think there is still that need for like face-to-face community is
Well,
just maybe
it's
something harder to find.
yeah, and it's interesting, like, there was this I might just be shooting from the hip from this, but I remember along, like, I don't know, a year ago, someone put out something that said that any given, like, Gen Z will have 75 unread text messages at any time, and it's true. We hate or
Yeah.
I hate texting. It stresses me out. I would rather call someone, I'd rather just meet up with them. It's just so much, and but that being said, this survey, like, it's all right in my head. I agree with everything. I just thought that I was in the minority with that. Me and my friends were in the minority, and so seeing that this is a majority is just so exciting to see that my generation wants to get outside, wants to hang out with friends, wants to watch like 2 hour long movies together. It's really cool to see. I'm
Yeah, and I
really
think one of
excited
the
about
things
it.
too that, I mean, I feel like I'm learning about you now because we are very different people. Because
Mhm.
for me, like any like one unread text message to me, I might not respond to it. I might happily ignore it, but I start having
You
cold
see.
sweats if I have any of those like red numbers on. Uh,
I have 110 right now.
ugh, ugh, ugh. I need to go. Uh, we'll work on that. But I do, I do think for me, one of the things that these sort of surveys I think are helpful for, and I think we're all guilty, regardless of the generation, is like I think generational studies and stuff are super helpful. I love it. Like I've read a bunch of books on the generations and digging in, trying to understand, the why we are the way we are and how we cross generational boundaries and all that stuff. I think there's tons of data out there that's helpful, but some of this stuff to me also is a reminder that like people change. Like I think there is sort of this danger of like, okay, now we know what Gen Z is, and like they're locked in this, like they're gonna be this forever. And like the only way we're gonna get change is when the next generation comes up and they'll be this. And like I think, there some of the narratives I think we just as Christians too need to be willing to adapt and to like allow it to expand, even just like spiritually. Like I think if you were to
Mhm.
ask, like what is Gen Z's view on God or something, if you were to ask that like 5 years ago, I think you would have one narrative. Like, but then now you see the data coming out, even within the last couple of weeks, of huge movements, especially among like Gen Z men, like coming back to church and this sort of spiritual awakening happening. And like I think God, we're not stuck, I guess. And that's what for me some of this data, and even why I like to see these sort of surveys every year, is just a reminder that like, sometimes people aren't exactly like we assume they are, or that we maybe that they used to be. And I think there is just a lot of value in kind of allowing ourselves to like update our, the box that we put people
Mhm.
uh, in. But any other kind of final thoughts for you as far as anything else that stood out to you as far as the data or kind of some of the, like, are you encouraged by some of the trajectory of where you see things going?
Definitely. And I think that it's also related to the return to church. Just as a whole, Gen Z is desiring and longing for those meaningful connections, meaningful conversations, because for so long it was just like either truth is subjective or something politicized, but now like we're growing up and we are changing and maturing, and part of that is figuring out what we're doing on this world. And I mean the answer to that is God and is Christ. So I reading through this made me very excited and made me feel um more connected to my generation, I would say.
Yeah, and I think even just the need for having like commonality, or because like it's interesting to me, like because obviously I think all generations, but especially Gen Z would be in there, like consume way more social media kind of content than they do movies at the movie theater, or like YouTube's the biggest streaming platform there is, way bigger than Netflix or Disney Plus or any of these. Like there is a sense that like that is the dominant sort of entertainment content feed. And yet I think because it's so spread out, it's so vast, we're so branched off into all these creators and type of people that we follow, that I think there's still sort of some simplicity hey, we can all talk about this movie because it's like a
Mhm.
shared thing we have. We get a
Mhm.
couple of these every week that comes out. We can all go see them at the same place. We can talk about it, and
Yeah.
there is sort of a sense of, we're so splintered off into these different segments and pockets of entertainment and stuff that there's value. And I think, like you said,
Mhm.
I think whether it's connected or whether it's just, hey, the church can come alongside and, speak into these needs and desires in a way.
Mhm.
I do think there is a place for the church to come in and, hey, Gen Z obviously wants community. They want to be able to sort of have, things in common with each other, to meet in person, to have those friendships, and it's all things that, like, the church can offer. So I'm
Mhm.
excited by. I've always been very pro younger generation and Gen Z. Maybe it's
Me
years
too.
of being the punching bag as millennials that I feel sympathy for now that Gen Z became
Mhm.
those youngins out there. So I'm excited by a lot of what I see coming out, both in terms of entertainment and also I think
Yeah.
just spiritually for
Yeah.
the generation. But something
Well,
that maybe,
yeah.
yeah,
You know what would help too? I think we should start a petition on the collision is for movie prices to decrease. I
yeah, I do
think.
think I was gonna say I feel like because people are overall are going to the movie theater less,
Yeah.
but you keep seeing that people want to go more. And I think part of it is just, hey,
What's
we
like
can't afford to pay
$30
$25
sometimes. Yeah.
and we don't want to
Yeah, it's
sit through
crazy.
30 minutes of previews. So I think
Yeah.
I think the answer is simpler than we might think. But
Mhm.
answers that are not simple and questions that are slightly more complicated is Halloween. So this is a conversation that I feel like every year in some capacity here at the Collision or on this podcast, we kind of wade into because I think it's still a conversation that like is happening every year. Like it's still one that there hasn't been a lot of consensus on. And although I do think you can see, even like I took my kids, which we can get into later, but like our church had a trunk or treat, which I know have become like kind of the thing you do now as now churches host these. Don't call them Halloween. You call them
Mm-mm.
family
It's trunk or
fun
treat. Yeah.
festival or fall festival or something to make sure that it's very clear that it's not Halloween. But dress up in costumes, go get candy. It's a lot of fun. My kids love it. I usually like volunteer and hand out candy. This year, I had too much going on, so we just went. So I do think you see like trends changing. Like the conversation isn't the same one we've always been having, but I do think it is one kind of worth having. So that we'll wade into it here on this podcast and just sort of look at, hey, what do we do as Christians with Halloween? It's a complicated question. It's a very divisive question. We're, I think, under no delusion that we will solve that we will provide the definitive answer to what Christians should do with it. But maybe to kind of set the stage for sort of this conversation and the holiday, before we get into sort of our approach and what we do with this, I know you were doing some research because there's various narratives out there and opinions and thoughts of like
Mhm.
what even is Halloween? Like, where did this come
Yeah.
from? Here, some people, it's Christian, it's pagan, it's satanic, it's wholesome, it's cultural, it's all these things. So why don't you illuminate us a little bit, kind of give us a bit of the history of this holiday, and maybe set the stage for sort of this sort of debate conflict, and then we can kind of do our best to start kind of piecing that out.
Yeah. Well, Halloween was a Celtic celebration celebrating the end of harvest, and it was called Samhain, and they believe that's when the ghost of the dead walked the earth. So they offered sacrifices to their gods with a huge bonfire. They wore animal heads and skins to just be in disguise, and then they told each other's fortunes. And then the Romans came and took over, and they combined it with a celebration of their goddess of fruit and trees, I think, and to commemorate the passing of the dead. And then in the 8th century, the Catholics took over. It's just everyone's taken over everything in this time. So in the 8th century, the Catholics took over, and they declared it All Hallows Eve to celebrate saints and martyrs, and to secretly, or not so secretly, depending who you ask, bring more people into the church. Then it came to America during the potato famine. Jeez, that's a hard word. During the potato famine, where the youth would ask for a treat and play a prank if they didn't get one. So that's, of course, trick or treat. But it led to a lot of violence and vandalism, and then they combined it with Native Americans to celebrate harvest and still tell fortunes, and it celebrated witchcraft until the early 1900s. It may have even been 1900 when the culture shifted to remove the superstitious, religious, spiritual, and to just kind of gross elements and pivot to a celebration of community, which is more of what we had now, or it was more of what we have now. So a couple of reasons why people say that we shouldn't celebrate it is because of the origins. They say that the idolatrous element is still there. And Forrest Frank, this man comes up in every single podcast that I've been on.
Friend
I
of the show,
swear.
for Frank.
Yeah, my good close and personal friend Forrest. He shared a video of a satanic pastor saying that
Former
it is
satanic pastor.
Forrest. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you. Can you say his name? I didn't know his name
No, I
until
was
now.
hoping you would say it. I'll give you the honor.
Okay. Ryan Swigalar. That's how we're gonna say it. Good old Rai. I don't know if that's anyways. But yes, he posted a video of this former satanic pastor who is now Catholic, I believe, saying that it is the highest day on the satanic calendar, the day with the most human sacrifices in the world, I believe. And so whenever a neighborhood is celebrating it, whenever there's trick-or-treating in a neighborhood, it becomes a satanic ritual. So I'll post the link to that video in the show notes below. And then some reasons why people say that we can celebrate it, and maybe even should, is that it's a great time to share the gospel with others because it's such a huge gathering of your community. You can celebrate community and family and just the fall weather. And also, I mean, this I think is a contentious subject, but can we assign our own meaning to a holiday and make it be about family and make it be about celebrating the seasons that God has given us, and it be okay even though it came from pagan origins? So that was a lot. That's a lot of how Halloween has changed over the years. So what are your thoughts, Daniel? Should we celebrate Halloween?
Well, I feel like we should say, because there's a lot to get into, we should probably just be upfront that we both grew up celebrating Halloween, or at least not, I don't know if celebrating is necessarily the right word, partaking in Halloween.
Yeah.
Like I went trick-or-treating as a kid. We used to have parties on Halloween where we'd invite all the people from our church and we'd, just have a lot of fun together. And now as a parent with young kids, like I take them trick-or-treating, every year. And so we definitely engage in it. I don't have a bunch of Halloween decorations and skeletons in my front yard, but we definitely participated in. I think that's sort of some of your story as well. But I do think it's important to sort of see the progression of, because you sort of hear people say things about kind of holidays and some of these things. It is this or it is this. It is pagan. It is, and the truth is a lot of what we celebrate by definition has pagan roots because those go further back than the Christian roots. They're before Jesus. A lot of these customs and stuff were based in pagan stuff, and you kind of see the sort of the tendency of the early church was always just to hey, the culture does this, we'll make it about Jesus. We'll do this thing. That's cool. People are already celebrating this thing. Because even Christmas is, Jesus probably wasn't born in December. People, will say even just the fact that the shepherds are out watching their fields and stuff, probably born or maybe in the summer or some other time. But December 25th, winter solstice was already an important day on the calendar, and the early Christians were hey, people celebrating this. It's an important day. Let's just make it about Jesus. So now we celebrate, but you could say it, does it have roots? Even a lot of our customs we do at Christmas, are based on things. And some of it comes down to, I know in philosophy, which is sort of my educational background, there's a thing called the genetic fallacy, which is essentially to make an argument against something based purely on the origin of the idea rather than the idea itself. Because it was this, it might not be that now in any way, but if you trace it back far enough, eventually you reach something, and therefore, however it started is how it forever has to be. And I think you can kind of see that's a very hard thing to be consistent with. Even I've said before, even just the names of the weeks, like Monday, the moon, Sunday, the sun god, like, Thursday, sort of Thor, or like, these different like Norse gods, and we're just named after the planets, like a lot of things. But like, I don't think we feel like we're compromising by referring to it as Sunday because it was named after like the sun god. Like
Mhm.
it's like no one sees it as that. Like that is not, no one feels like they're worshiping these ancient, fictional deities based on, and then like, things like Christmas and different holidays. Like I think what makes Halloween different uh, is just that it's sort of some of those roots are still very vivid, and I think some of the imagery has sort of carried on to where it makes
Mhm.
it, like Christmas, a Christmas tree and some lights and stuff like that's not necessarily like shocking to us, or like, it's not, even if those came from things that maybe weren't originally part of
Mhm.
the church, those are other cultural customs that we've sort of adopted. Like that's different than, a bunch of ghosts hanging from your tree, or things that are more evocative of sort of some of the roots that are still there. Kind of and then I want to hear some of your thoughts, Tina. But like, the verse that I always go back to with how kind of Halloween is
Mhm.
the discussion in the New Testament about like the meat sacrificed to idols, because to me that is sort of touching on the genetic fallacy of like you have the early church that came out of this pagan background, and like so, and then you have sort of this meat that they were going to eat, but it had originally been offered, to as sacrifices to these pagan gods,
Mhm.
and you have a very divided early church of like, hey, some of them are like, it's just meat. I like meat. We'll eat it. Well, we're fellowshipping. It's just, don't worry about that. And then you have the other segment of like, no, but like, this is like invoking something in me that reminds me of my past, and
Yeah.
it's sort of tainted spiritually, and
Mhm.
I just, I feel like unclean and wrong to partake in this meat. And kind of the two verses in that passage of First Corinthians 8 that I think are good for us is one where Paul says, but food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we eat it, if we do not eat, and no better if we do. Essentially saying, like, hey, things are just things. Like meat is meat. Like there's, if it's going to lead you astray, if it's not going to lead you astray. At the end of the day, things are just things. Like that's not really the point. The point is, what does that do for your own spiritual walk? And then the second verse is where he says, "Be careful, however, that the exercise of your rights does not become a stumbling block for to the weak," which is verse 8, 9. And I like that verse. I think that is an important one for like Halloween discussion, but from both sides, because I think
Mhm.
that verse gets used for, therefore Christians should not celebrate Halloween because that causes me to be a stumbling block. That I don't like that, so you need to adapt to me. And I don't think that's really the point. Like I think the point is just like be aware of those that don't share those same convictions. And like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, meat's meat, eat it, don't eat it. But like the main thing is don't let that difference of opinion cause division within the church. Like that is more important to Paul and to the church than whatever it is that,
Mhm.
the actual thing that is being um, celebrated. But what are some of your sort of, as you've sort of thought through just Halloween and, some of the arguments for or against, like how have you sort of navigated some of these questions?
Yeah. It's been on my mind definitely since we started looking at this as a topic for this week. And yeah, at the end of the day, it definitely comes down to personal conviction because there's no verse about Halloween specifically. Like we all know that. But yeah, I think as long as we're respecting each other and respecting each other's convictions, then we're able to do celebrate Halloween, don't celebrate Halloween, but telling somebody that you're sinning if you're celebrating Halloween and all you're doing is like trick or treating, or all you're doing is going to maybe a friend's house for a Halloween dinner, like that is definitely going to cause division, and we have to be. I think it calls us also to be humble, and I think it's really, really cool too that even though some of us might have really, really hard backgrounds and Halloween could trigger some of those past emotions or even cause some sort of temptation, it's really cool that God gives us convictions to me, like just showing that we are all unique and we're all seen as special in his eyes. And so yeah, I think there's a lot we could go into about this, but
Yeah, and I think
those are
I
my
was telling you
general thoughts.
I was telling you a little bit too before we even went on air. Like I know, like growing up in my youth group, like we used to our church used to like host like a youth sort of rally, and it would like be scheduled on Halloween. And again, I don't want to. I think the intentions were probably fine. It was very much like, and they bring someone in to like kind of fire and brimstone about hell, and like it was very. Um, and I think the intentions were probably good. They were trying to speak truth into a difficult question, but the actual like consequence, like the impact of that is
Mhm.
that it became a very like divisive. Like you sort of had the Christians that were in church on that day, or the Christians that skipped to go into the world and trick or treat and honor Satan with their life, and it became a very like contentious sort of like you're on this side or you're on this side, and I feel like that's
Mhm.
sort of what Paul's getting at of like, what, like, yeah, like ask those questions, have those conversations. It's not, I think, like I don't think it's a simplistic like, well, of course celebrate it, you weak Christian. And I don't think it's, of course, don't, if you even take one chocolate bar, you might as well offer it, to Satan as a sacrifice. Like I don't think it's simplistic like that. I think we need to have those conversations, but
Yeah,
I just
definitely.
think establishing sort of that tension to me is way more harmful than the fact that some Christians took their kids to get, a bunch of M&M bags in their
Yeah.
neighborhood with their neighbors. Like, and I do think there is, and I want to be careful that I don't, this is something that I see come up a lot with even like movies and stuff, is
Mhm.
the fact that like spiritual darkness is absolutely real. And I think you see that all throughout scripture. That is a reality that Christians should be like, not take too lightly. Like that is truth. Like that is biblical truth. At the same time, I do think that there is like a disproportionate fear aimed towards witchcraft. Like I think, you know, if you sort of get this idea that for some Christians, they sort of view the world as though, there's, just this brimming with witches and sorcerers, and like,
Mhm.
you go to the grocery store and half the people you brush shoulders with are probably a witch at home. And like, it's, like, I don't know, like a lot of people that are very against sort of Halloween or the witchcraft element. I wonder if they know or have ever interacted with like a legit in the occult witch, like, I don't think
Yeah.
that's part of our every, because even like the video that Force Frank shared, I was trying to do some research. The guy in the video that you said his name, and I don't know if I'll
Ryan.
try, Ryan, as we call him. That like it's the number one day for human sacrifices. Um, like I tried to look into some of that. Like that's a pretty big claim.
Mhm.
And it's, I think there's my initial skepticism would just be like, I don't know if Halloween is celebrated internationally enough for that to even be the case. Like I don't think it.
Mm.
I know it is become more international holiday, but I know there's a lot of countries and stuff that don't. So like it does seem kind of a more of a Western thing.
Yeah.
And even like some of the claim, the data itself, again, and he's speaking from his personal experience, having been in the Satan, a Satanist. And like
Mhm.
I can't, who am I to question his own experiences? Like, I wasn't
Yeah,
there.
definitely.
So in one sense, you just sort of have to trust him on that. But as far as this like data and stuff, like there's just not data to support that. Like
Mhm.
and I think there would be, if this is the day where, you just have all this human sacrifices happening, like, but then there's no like, people being charged with murder for satanic human sacrifice. Like there's a lot of claims of it, I guess, but like, you don't find a lot of police reports and stuff. Like most of it um, kind of gets debunked, I guess. And part of me is like, again, not that we need to diminish the reality of it and make it, there's no occult, it's all just made up conspiracies, like, because there definitely is. I just think we focus our attention on like sin and Satanism at sort of the aesthetic of like the broomsticks and cauldrons and pointy hats and like people making human
Yeah.
sacrifices. And like I really don't think that is the primary danger in our culture right now. Like, I
Mm-mm.
don't think, maybe that happens, maybe that is happening somewhere, and that's horrible. um, but I don't think sort of as a widespread, our main challenge as the church is that we live in
Yeah.
a nation of witches. Like, I think
Yeah.
like, I kind of go back to even Jesus telling like Peter, like, get behind me, Satan. Like, he wasn't saying, hey, Peter, like, stop flying your broomstick around Jerusalem. Like it was
You
just
don't
like
know
Peter
that.
was
He could
speaking.
have been.
Yeah, that's in the
He
apocryphal
wasn't.
version, the expanded. But like, like what he was pushing back about, saying like, hey, Satan is just, not honoring God,
Yeah.
resisting God's purposes and designs. Like that is where Satan is at work, not just sort of in the
Mhm.
cauldrons. And I think that,
Yeah.
because I think even a lot of like the scary data that you can see about like, I got in my research this week, like, the rise of Satanism in America is growing. And I mean, if you go into the data, it's still, it says like it grew by 300% this, over this decade, was one article I came across, like the Telegraph or something.
Wow.
And like the actual data is like, well, it started, and I think this was in like England or Britain, but like it started at like 300 people and it ended up at like, 1,500. Like it's the
Mhm.
numbers itself remain very small. And I think even what we think of as like Satanism today is really just atheism with a religious coat of paint. Like I looked at,
Mhm.
maybe we can throw up, we can throw it up on the screen, but I looked up like the Church of Satan. I looked up their like on their website this week to sort of see like their tenets and like what is like a Satanist actually believe. And it's essentially just atheism. One should strive to act with
Yeah.
compassion in accordance with reason. Like it's very much not spiritual. It's, it's the reason. The belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care to never distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. Um, so very much not like, the tenets are sacrifice a human on the altar to Satan. Like I think it's become more atheism than it
Mhm.
is Satanism. So even some of the data that does come out as like this many people on a survey say they are Satanists. Like I think the number that would actually, to bring this back to Halloween, like the number of those that would actually conform to what our image is of like the danger abuse of Halloween, I
Mhm.
think are exceedingly small of
Yeah.
those that would actually see this as a day to like honor Satan as a literal,
Mhm.
evil person. But I don't know, what are some of your other thoughts on this? Like I know we don't have tons of time, but
Yeah.
like how do we? Because there is a danger of that, but like, is it just easy to sort of see rebellion against God when it's wrapped in like this spooky aesthetic? Like, do we make too much of it and maybe not enough of this Satanism the other
Mhm.
364 days of the year? Like, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I mean, the thing I keep coming back to, I was reading in Matthew 6 today, the sermon, I think it's still the Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus is talking about how um, you have to fill your eyes with light. Like, what light are you letting your eyes see? And so that basically, of course, means look at God, keep your sights set on God. And I think we're too easily tempted to keep looking to the world and getting angry that people are celebrating Halloween or calling someone a witch because she is drinking, I don't know, kombucha or something. I love kombucha personally. Um, but like, I think by doing that, by calling out names, by making up scriptures, we're filling our eyes with darkness and not with the light of Christ. And so if as long as we're looking at God, speaking his truth, listening to the Spirit when we are convicted about something and acting on it, I think that that's what we need to be focusing on and not on condemning people around us.
Yeah, and I do think there is it is a valid question of like, so how do you do that? Like, how do you,
Yeah.
because even like my kid yesterday, we were scrambling to find Halloween costumes, and one of them is going to be a hot dog, so that was an easy one. But then very spooky. But the other one, like at the store, had asked like he wanted to be a Grim Reaper. And we're like, you know what? Like,
Mhm.
no, like just find a different costume for you. Like, like I don't necessarily think that he would be honoring
Yeah.
Satan as like I think for him it's a spooky costume. He thinks it's kind
Mhm.
of cool. It's death, and like it's like I don't think as a father I would necessarily be all that concerned either. But I was like, but we just don't need to celebrate that way. Like there's a
Mhm.
way to do this that you know there's places we don't go with the holiday. But even like because you're saying like kombucha, like, I think of something like yoga. Like some of these things where it's like, you know what, like yeah, like there's roots and sort of some spiritual elements. Like, you know, I think the vast majority of people that do yoga,
Mhm.
I'm a runner. I'll do yoga just because my legs are super stiff, and like, I'm not using my third eye. I'm just
Mhm.
letting the person tell me how to stretch my leg. Like, I think there's a way to sort of redeem things in a wise
Yeah.
way. And I think that's sort of been the history of the church. Like even like I've always thought, like imagine, time traveling, go back to like the first century, like what a lot of first century Christians would think, like to see modern day Christians with like a cross necklace. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, like you're wearing a horrible instrument of death and execution around
Mhm.
your neck. Like, isn't
That's a
that
good
sort of
point.
making light? Shouldn't we take it more serious? Isn't this,
Mhm.
I think kind of the MO of Christianity is being to like, no, like we're actually gonna redeem this. Like it was this dark thing, now it's not this dark thing. Now it represents
Yeah.
something more wholesome. And not to say that Halloween's on the same level as like the cross. Like I don't think we can redeem it in the same way. But I do think there is an argument to be made, or just I don't know. I think there's value as Christians to like, hey, we can actually be present in our community, and we are so gated off that this is one opportunity where like a lot of neighbors and stuff actually get out of their house and go door to door,
Mhm.
and we can brush shoulders with people outside of our church, and we can bless people, and like we can make kids happy that day, and they think of us as a house that made this a real fun night for them. Like there's I don't know, I think there's ways that we can separate of like, hey, there's some dark stuff, we're not going to participate
Mhm.
in that side of it, but there's also an opportunity here to bless people and to be a witness and to just be a fun presence in our community. And like, I think Christians can do that. And I don't think it's compromising
Mm-mm.
to say like that you can try and walk that line. I don't think it has to be like an all or nothing. Because again, we don't do that with Christmas. We don't do that with a
No.
lot of other holidays and stuff where we feel like we have to be, well, if there's any bad elements that could happen, therefore we just need to abstain from it. Like, I don't know. I just don't think that's necessarily realistic, but I do get the concerns. Like I do get the spookiness. For me, I just think it becomes an easy sort of sensationalized target of like, it's easy to see a kid dressed up in a devil costume and think this is bad and Satanism. It's harder to see, like at Christmas time when we're all just obsessed with consumerism and different elements that are fueling our own stuff instead of God's purpose for Christmas. Like it's harder to see that as get behind me, Satan, than it
Mhm.
is some of the Halloween stuff. And I think it just makes it more. I don't know. For me, it's always been like whether you celebrate, whether you don't, just get beyond sort of some of the sensationalized, like the scare tactics, and
Mhm.
actually have good conversations about it, and like
Yeah.
kind of work through some of that. So I don't know. So whether you celebrate or you don't celebrate, or you participate or you hand out candy, whatever you do, just don't hand out Bible tracts. That's the last thing I'll say. Is like if you are going to participate, then don't do it in a
Just
way
tape a
like
candy bar to the other side. It'll be
yeah.
fine.
If you're going to do it, at least do nothing. I think makes like I can't imagine a kid being like, well, you know, I'm in church today because all the other homes gave me these delicious Kit Kat bars, and this place gave me a piece of paper that told me I need to change my life or come to their church or something.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to participate, but don't. But I do think the family fall festivals is a good way for the church, and it seems like
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
mean, you don't have kids, like, so I don't know if you've seen as
Mm-mm.
much. I don't know the last time you went trick or treating, but like trick or treating, at least where we are, like, and we kind of live in the Bible Belt, so it makes sense. But it's kind of dying. Like, it's harder and harder to find
Yeah. It's
homes that
sad.
actually do it. Like, you got to walk a long way. Like, not like when I was a kid, you could just run door to door, which is interesting to me. I think it's sad. The nostalgic part of me thinks it's sad.
Mhm.
Like, that was such a fun memories I had as a kid. But it is interesting that like in some ways Halloween is becoming more and more like we don't call it Halloween, obviously, but like more and more a church event. Like,
Mhm.
I think it's becoming more like, hey, houses don't do it, so but all these churches are doing trunk or treat, and that's become, like they never had that when I was a kid. Like, so it is interesting that I think it is becoming more and more kind of, which is maybe ironic, but like within something that
Yeah.
the church does, like the church is actually filling that void that is sort of being left by the cultural holiday itself,
Mhm.
kind of dying. Now, speaking of voids, things that are empty in your heart and soul that need to be filled, the final segment of this podcast episode, we have things we like that you should like too. So, this is my week to share something that I like. And I thought I would stay consistent with our theme of Halloween and share one thing and I'm assuming I don't need to tell people because they already like it, but that is Sour Patch Kids. I think as far as Halloween candy goes, like this is
It's
the peak of like, it's all downhill from the day we invented Sour Patch Kids. Like
it's
combining
written
everything,
it's written on
like
the show notes as SPK, and I've been staring at this for the past hour, being like, "What is that?"
what deep insights.
It's,
Uh, I mean, like for me, this is the perfect candy. Like this is, and
I
I have a
love
bit of a
Sour
sweet
Patch
tooth.
Kids.
Like I'm not like a cake kind of pie ice cream guy, but I do enjoy, a handful of candy from time to time. And Sour Patch Kid, you got the sour, you got the sweet, you got the texture. There's just
Yeah,
something about
the
that
texture.
flavor that has just never been like quite matched. And I think it's one of those candies that like, you can't just have a couple. Like
Mm-hmm.
you start eating them and then you just keep eating them until
Yeah,
sadly you run out of your jumbo share bag of
and then your
Sour
mouth
Patch
has
Kids.
blisters.
Oh, that's the best. If you don't have blisters yet, then you did not eat quite enough. Are you a Sour Patch Kid person? Like, what is your
I
ideal Halloween candy?
Yeah, I personally really like Reese's Pieces. I don't like Reese's Cups, weirdly enough, but I love Reese's Pieces. I love peanut M&Ms, and I don't like peanuts. So it's like all these weird things happening. But I have a weirdly high tolerance for sour candy that I didn't even have to build up. So that's one of my badges of pride, is that we used to have like the warhead candies.
Oh, the black cherry is definitely the most sour warhead.
Oh yeah, we used to like compete and see who could last the longest, and not to brag or anything, but I definitely
See
did
here,
well.
here's the thing too. Here's the best part about being a parent is you can coach your kids. So like we went to the family fall festival, and like you got to give them the dad talk of like you're gonna get up to a trunk. They're gonna have a lot of options. Like avoid the Tootsie Rolls. No one likes those.
Oh,
Like I don't know why we came out. Like, there's
why
even
do
chocolate
people
bars.
keep getting them? Yeah.
Chocolate bars, they're all kind of the same. You can, if you have a couple, you don't need to keep taking Kit Kat bars or Snickers. Like chocolate's chocolate. Like you got to go for the sour stuff, and you got to go for some of the gummies because those are more rare. Twizzlers, but if they're like the colored, like the sweet tarts ropes, like go for
Yeah.
those.
Oh
So
yeah.
you coach them, and then they go and they do it, and
And
they
then you
give
eat
give the
them.
bag to you, and then you are the filter through. Here, you've been good this week. You can have an M&M as you're just chowing them all night. So maybe that deep down, maybe that is why I am more pro Halloween, is because I just like using my kids. They have fun. I get sour candy. So we all win. But hopefully we all win every time we have this podcast. Always stuff to get into, interesting stuff. I know even just from looking at our show notes for the next couple weeks, there's a lot of interesting stuff on the horizon. I got some guests coming in, got I think some big topics, some fun topics, just a lot of stuff. So we hope that you will join us then to dig into it more and more every Thursday for more conversations on faith and pop culture.